The X-rated doll that secretly became Barbie. Picture this. Millions of little girls asking Santa for a doll that was originally sold to grown men in bars as a naughty gag gift. Yeah, that doll grew up to wear a pink Corvette and a wedding dress and become the best-selling toy of all time. This is the twisted, hilarious, and honestly kind of scandalous true story of where Barbie actually came from. The woman who stole her, the lawsuit that almost buried the whole company, and the decades of controversy that came after. Hey friends, welcome back. Grab your tea, get comfy, because today's story starts in a smoky German bar and ends somewhere you would never expect. Let's get into it. So everyone knows Barbie, right? Blonde, tiny waist, impossible proportions, owns more shoes than anyone should legally be allowed to own. She's sold in like 150 countries. She's had a $2 billion movie made about her. And honestly, at this point, she's less of a toy and more of a cultural institution. But here's the thing about institutions. They almost always have a messy, complicated origin story hiding underneath the shiny PR version, and Barbie is no exception. In fact, Barbie might have one of the wildest origin stories in toy history. And for decades, the company that made her billions of dollars did not want you to know about it. The official story, the one Mattel has told in interviews and press releases for basically 70 years, goes like this. A woman named Ruth Handler, co-founder of Mattel, watched her daughter Barbara playing with paper dolls. And Ruth noticed something. Her daughter wasn't playing mommy with these paper dolls, giving them babies and diapers and all that. She was giving them grown-up lives. Careers, romances, glamorous outfits, whole imaginary adult storylines. And Ruth thought, there's no toy on the market like that. Little girls playing baby dolls? Sure, that existed forever. But a doll that let a kid imagine being a grown woman with agency didn't exist. So, she invented one. Sweet story, right? Mom notices a gap in the market, mom invents an icon. Hooray for female entrepreneurship. It's the kind of story that gets you a spot on a motivational poster. Except, and stick with me here, that's only about half true. The other half of the story involves a German comic strip, a doll sold in tobacco shops to grown men, and a multi-year international copyright dispute that Mattel spent decades trying to make everyone forget about. Let's take it back, way back. Post-war Germany, early 1950s. There was a wildly popular tabloid newspaper called Bild. Still exists today, still tabloidy. Think of it as Germany's answer to gossip papers. And in 1952, Bild started running a comic strip featuring a character named Lily. Now, Lily was not your average sweet cartoon girl. Lily was blunt, she was sharp-tongued, she was a total gold digger, and she said exactly what she wanted with zero apology. She'd run circles around every man who crossed her path, take their money, roll her eyes at their nonsense, and move on to the next guy with better prospects. Basically, if Regina George had grown up in post-war Berlin and gotten really into capitalism, that's Lily. And German readers loved her. She was funny, she was scandalous for the era, and she felt like a bit of a wink at how ridiculous men could be. The strip did so well that in 1955, someone at the company had an idea. What if we turned Lily into an actual physical doll? And this is the part of the story that a lot of people don't know. Because here's the thing. This doll was absolutely 100% not made with children in mind. Bild Lily was marketed as a novelty item for grown men. We are talking sold in tobacco shops, sold in bars, sold in adult stores. This was the kind of thing you'd pick up as a gag gift for your buddy's bachelor party, not something you'd wrap up and put under a Christmas tree for a 6-year-old. Men would buy her and stick her on their car dashboard like a little pin-up mascot, or keep her on their office desk as a joke. She came dressed in slightly risque little outfits. The whole vibe of this doll was adult humor, not wholesome plaything. She was basically a gag gift with a full wardrobe. Now here's where our girl, Ruth Handler, enters the story. In 1956, Ruth was traveling through Europe with her family. Just a regular vacation, nothing crazy. And while she was in Switzerland, she wandered past a shop window and spotted Bild Lily sitting there. And apparently, she was floored. Because up until this point, dolls sold to children in America were almost exclusively baby dolls or toddler dolls. The entire point of a doll, according to the toy industry at the time, was to teach little girls how to be mothers. feed the baby, change the baby, rock the baby to sleep. That's it. That's the whole doll landscape. There was nothing on shelves shaped like a grown adult woman with her own wardrobe, her own glamorous little independent life. Ruth looked at this slightly risque bar novelty doll and had an actual light bulb moment. She bought a handful of them right there in the shop, packed them into her suitcase, and brought them home to Mattel. And listen, I need you to sit with that for a second, because I have so many questions about that customs experience. Picture Ruth Handler walking through an airport with a suitcase full of adult novelty dolls from a German bar. "What's the purpose of your trip, ma'am?" "Oh, just some research materials. Nothing to see here." Incredible. Truly incredible energy. So back at Mattel, Ruth handed these Build Lily dolls over to the design team and essentially said, "Build me something like this, but for kids." The team studied everything, the proportions, the face sculpt, the overall aesthetic, and used it as the direct blueprint for what would eventually become Barbie. They softened the face a little, adjusted a few details, but if you line up an early Barbie doll next to an original Build Lily side by side, the resemblance is not subtle. It's not inspired by. It's basically the same doll with a new outfit and a new backstory. Barbie officially launched in March of 1959, debuting at the American International Toy Fair in New York City. Mattel introduced her as Barbie Teenage Fashion Model, named, as the official story goes, after Ruth's own daughter, Barbara. And here's a fun detail. Buyers at that toy fair were actually skeptical at first. An adult-bodied doll marketed to little girls felt risky to a lot of industry gatekeepers at the time, maybe even a little inappropriate. Several buyers passed on ordering her for their stores. But Mattel pushed forward anyway, and once Barbie actually hit shelves that fall, she sold like absolutely nothing the toy industry had ever seen. Over 300,000 units in the first year alone. Little girls were obsessed instantly. Turns out, the exact same qualities that made Lily a hit with grown men in bars, glamour, independence, a whole aspirational lifestyle packed into a few inches of plastic, also worked incredibly well on 8-year-olds, just repackaged with a much more wholesome marketing campaign and zero mention of tobacco shops. But here's where the story gets messy, because Mattel never actually asked permission to base an entire toy line on someone else's copyrighted character. They just kind of did it, quietly, for years. And the original German company behind Build Lily was not thrilled once they pieced together what had happened across the Atlantic. Throughout the early 1960s, as Barbie exploded into a genuine cultural phenomenon and started making Mattel serious money, the rights holders back in Germany started making noise. Legal disputes and infringement claims started flying around, essentially arguing that this record-breaking American toy was a direct, unauthorized copy of their design. And Mattel, now a massive, increasingly wealthy company thanks entirely to Barbie's runaway success, did what massive wealthy companies love to do when a problem threatens their golden goose. They didn't fight it out in court for years, they just bought the whole problem out. In 1964, Mattel purchased the patent and rights to Build Lily outright, completely, which conveniently made the entire "we may have built our billion-dollar brand off a doll originally sold in tobacco shops" issue disappear overnight. Once Mattel owned the rights, there was nobody left withstanding to sue them. Tidy little bow on a genuinely messy secret. And for decades after that, Mattel really did not want this story getting out. The public-facing origin story stayed locked in on the "watching my daughter play" narrative, which, to be fair, probably is a real part of the truth. Ruth likely did notice her daughter wanting more grown-up dolls. That detail checks out. But the actual design, the face, the body proportions, the entire concept of an adult-bodied fashion doll, that traces directly back to a novelty item built for men to keep on their car dashboards, not for kids to play house with. Two things can be true at once, and Mattel spent a long time only telling you the flattering one. It's honestly one of those stories that feels almost too perfect for how toy industry history tends to go. Someone notices a gap in the market, quietly borrows the blueprint from something never intended for that audience, and builds a legitimate empire on it before anyone can meaningfully stop them. And it worked, spectacularly. Barbie has sold over 1 billion dolls worldwide since 1959. She's had over 200 different careers over the decades: astronaut, doctor, president, paleontologist, you name it. And she actually became a doll astronaut before NASA sent the first American woman into space. She inspired a movie that made over $1 billion at the box office. She remains, to this day, one of the most successful toy franchises that has ever existed on planet Earth. Build Lily, meanwhile? She mostly faded into total obscurity once Mattel bought her out and quietly let production stop. Most people who grew up loving Barbie have absolutely no idea that her original blueprint was a slightly scandalous gag gift doll sold to grown men in 1950s Germany. It's a wild little footnote sitting quietly underneath one of the most recognizable toys on the entire planet. Now here's the thing, the copyright drama wasn't even close to the last controversy in Barbie's history, because once Ruth Handler and Mattel had their doll, they spent the next several decades stepping in it over and over again, in ways that are honestly kind of fascinating to look back on. Let's talk about the body, because obviously we have to. From day one, people raised concerns about Barbie's proportions. If Barbie were scaled up to average adult human height, her measurements would be so extreme that researchers have pointed out she likely wouldn't have the proportions needed to menstruate, let alone walk upright comfortably. For decades, generations of little girls played with a doll shaped like something that couldn't physically exist, and plenty of psychologists and parents raised alarms over the years about what that might be doing to body image in young kids. Mattel didn't majorly address this until 2016, more than 50 years after launch, when they finally introduced Barbie dolls with different body types, tall, petite, curvy, alongside a wider range of skin tones and face sculpts. Better late than never, I guess, but 50+ years is a long time to sit on a controversy you're fully aware of. Then there's the infamous Teen Talk Barbie situation from 1992. Mattel released a version of Barbie that could say a handful of pre-programmed phrases when you pulled a string, and one of the 270 possible phrases was, "Math class is tough." Doesn't sound like much until you realize this was randomly assigned to about 1 out of every 100 Barbie dolls, and it set off a genuine national controversy. The American Association of University Women publicly criticized it for reinforcing the stereotype that girls aren't good at math. Feminist organizations got involved, and it became such a big news story that Mattel actually announced they'd remove the phrase from future dolls and offered exchanges for anyone who already had one. A tiny plastic doll with a pull-string voice box became a legitimate flashpoint in the national conversation about gender and education. Wild. And through all of this, Ruth Handler herself had her own separate scandal completely unrelated to the doll. In the 1970s, after leaving Mattel, Ruth was actually indicted on charges related to falsifying financial reports and stock manipulation at the company. She pleaded no contest, received probation, community service, and a fine. So the woman who built an empire off borrowing a German bar doll's blueprint later found herself in genuine legal trouble for cooking the books. If you're keeping score at home, a copyright dispute quietly settled with cash, and a securities fraud case settled with a plea deal. Not exactly a squeaky clean legacy, even setting the doll drama aside. What's wild is that despite every one of these controversies, the copied design, the impossible body proportions, the math class incident, the founder's own legal troubles, Barbie never actually stopped selling. If anything, she just kept absorbing controversy and evolving past it, decade after decade, like the brand equivalent of a cockroach that also happens to own several convertibles and a dream house. Every few years there's a new scandal, a new apology, a new, updated and improved doll line. And somehow, the whole machine just keeps rolling forward. So the next time someone hands you a Barbie and calls her iconic, timeless, wholesome American toy, you now have an arsenal of hot goss to hit them with. Tell them about her secret older sister who used to hang out in German bars. Tell them about the lawsuit Mattel quietly paid to make disappear. Tell them about the "math class is tough" scandal. Watch their whole perception of a pink plastic doll shift in real time. That's the power of knowing your history, baby. That's the story for you today, friends. Thanks so much for hanging out with me through this one. If you learned something today, let me know in the comments and tell me what other, wait, that's the real origin story topics you want me to dig into next. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye!